We first met during my last year of college when I was out with friends. It was Laura's 21st birthday, and she was celebrating at a local club in Nashville. Our encounter was anything but smooth. I accidentally knocked my drink onto her as I passed her table. After the initial embarrassment, I apologized and helped clean up the mess. This awkward start led to a conversation, and from there, it felt like a spark ignited between us. Some might call it love at first sight, but I believe there was a special chemistry that drew us together like magnets. From that night on, we were inseparable. A year later, we got married and began our life journey together. I'm Ethan Cooper, though my friends call me Johnny. With a degree in accounting, I became a certified public accountant at a well-regarded firm in Atlanta. Laura and I settled nearby, close to our families. After a few years of building my skills at the firm, I ventured out to start my own practice. Laura, who has a degree in business administration, supported me through those early days until she became pregnant with our wonderful daughter, Raphael. Our relationship was exceptional. We were deeply in love and treasured every moment together. When Raphael arrived, our love grew to include our precious daughter. For the next decade, we lived the ideal family life. I focused on expanding my business, while Laura managed the household and cared for Raphael. Our happiness was clear in our frequent intimate moments, at least 3 times a week. Our bond was based on genuine love and deep sensual connection, without any desire for experimentation or rough play. We respected each other too much for that. Laura enjoyed being pampered, and I took joy in indulging her. However, she wasn't too keen on intimate acts and only engaged in them on special occasions, perhaps fewer than 10 times throughout our marriage. I never pushed her boundaries because I was content with our life and cherished our relationship. One of the things I loved most about Laura was her attentiveness. From the moment we got married, she showered me with affection, kisses, hugs, hand-holding, and never letting go whenever we were together. Our closeness was remarkable, and we cherished every moment. Our friends often joked that our affection wouldn't last, but after 10 years of such devotion, they came to see the uniqueness of our bond. When Raphael turned 10, Laura wanted to re-enter the workforce. Now that Raphael was in a routine and returning home from school by 3:30 p.m., Laura said she didn't want to be stuck at home all the time and wanted to re-engage with society. After some discussion, we agreed on a plan to ensure Raphael continued to get the attention she needed. Laura found a job as a personal assistant to George Matthews, a lawyer a decade older than her. The hours were convenient, and Laura enjoyed taking on significant responsibilities, which boosted her confidence as she transitioned from homemaker to professional and mother. She found fulfillment in her new role, and I supported her fully. She managed to come home every day on time and remained dedicated to Raphael. As time went on, our family bond grew stronger. We enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle in a high-end apartment complex and had memberships to a country club. Thanks to our financial stability, we could comfortably save for Raphael's college education and our retirement. Our lives were enriched by good health, financial security, and a sense of contentment, free from undue worries. Like many couples after a decade of marriage, the dynamics of our intimate life shifted. We went from being intimate 3 or 4 times a week to just twice, usually on Friday and Saturday nights. Even though our routine became more predictable, our love for each other remained strong, and we valued our closeness deeply. Laura continued to be attentive and affectionate, which I cherished greatly. The emotional connection we shared was as important to me as our physical closeness. Laura's spontaneous kisses and hugs, given just out of love, were profoundly moving and became a highlight of our marriage. I reciprocated her love, and Laura always reassured me of the depth of her feelings. When Raphael joined the math club and stayed late at school, returning home around 5 p.m., Laura also began working late twice a week. This arrangement worked out well, aligning with Raphael's return home and my schedule. We were determined not to leave her alone at that age, so we coordinated our schedules to ensure she was always supervised. Laura's boss, George Matthews, was recently promoted to senior partner at his father-in-law's firm. Following his promotion, Laura found herself needing to work a few extra hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays, returning home around 7 p.m. On those evenings, I made sure dinner was ready for her after her demanding workday. Despite these changes, everything else in our marriage remained steady. My own business was thriving, providing a stable and satisfactory income. With our firm now employing 45 people, I was fully occupied with expanding operations. Our accounting firm had built a reputation for excellence and was catching the eye of larger regional firms, some of which were considering acquisitions or mergers. As Raphael reached the age of 15 and started exploring college options and future plans, Laura continued working with George and maintained her appearance as attractive as ever. The passing years had been kind to Laura. She kept her slender figure, highlighted by her long legs and well-rounded backside, and she still had a lovely visage. Laura consistently projected professionalism and conservatism. Our lifestyle might have seemed dull to some. We mostly spent our time at home, whether watching movies or attending family gatherings with Raphael. As a family, we were inseparable, rarely going out without each other. George, Laura's supervisor, contacted me to inform me that Laura would be honored at an upcoming banquet next month. Both Raphael and I were invited to the event. I eagerly shared the news with Raphael that her mother was set to receive an award for her outstanding work. This recognition was unexpected, and although such events are usually exclusive to staff, we were invited to attend. We were asked to keep it a secret until the ceremony. Laura's dedication over the past 5 years under George's leadership had not only brought her professional satisfaction but also boosted her self-esteem, which was evident in her improved demeanor at home. Knowing about her hard work and the respect she commanded within the company, Raphael and I felt a deep sense of pride. Laura had mentioned an upcoming business meeting at the downtown Ritz-Carlton where she'd be working late to prepare a presentation for the entire company. She was excited about the opportunity and had spent many hours preparing her presentation in the weeks leading up to the event. Unaware of our invitation and her impending award, Laura remained in the dark as Raphael and I eagerly awaited the ceremony. As the event approached, anticipation grew. I took Raphael shopping for a new dress, and I bought a new suit to ensure that Laura's presentation would make her family proud. On the day of the award ceremony, Laura wore a knee-length dress with an elegant cutout back. It projected professionalism while highlighting her graceful curves. Despite being 37, she still radiated attractiveness and desirability. Before the limo arrived to take us, Raphael and I embraced Laura, wishing her luck with her presentation. With 2 hours to spare, we dressed promptly and arrived at the venue about 30 minutes before Laura's presentation. We were greeted by a host who seated us at a table positioned center stage, offering a breathtaking view of the podium. Raphael and I were made to feel special, with everyone expressing their admiration for Laura and their pleasure in meeting us. We felt warmly welcomed and content to be there with our wife and mother. As the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the program, spotlights illuminated the stage. The first speaker introduced the firm's founder, followed by the CEO, and then George, the senior partner. George delivered a brief speech, highlighting the company's achievements before introducing Laura, who would share some of the successes from the past year. Laura took the stage, radiating beauty, and I could see the pride in Raphael's eyes as she watched her mother start her presentation with grace and professionalism. Laura detailed the company's accomplishments over the past year, outlining their successes and ongoing projects. After about 10 minutes, she wrapped up her speech and handed the stage back to George. However, before she left, George took her hands and drew her closer to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "before Laura steps down from the stage, I'd like to say a few words. Over the past 5 years, Laura and I have worked closely together, and she has become an indispensable part of our organization and my professional life." George continued, "I firmly believe that without Laura, we wouldn't have achieved the successes she spoke about today. It is with great honor that I present her with our highest accolade, the Chairman's Club Award. This award is given to employees who exceed expectations and are recognized for their unwavering dedication to the company." Laura was presented with a large plaque and an envelope containing a $10,000 check. With tears welling up in her eyes, she gratefully accepted both, embraced George, and turned to address the audience, expressing her heartfelt gratitude. Raphael and I were both moved to tears, overwhelmed with pride for Laura. The people at our table showered me with hugs, making it one of the most joyous evenings we had experienced. Bursting with pride, we couldn't stop smiling as the lights came on, signaling the start of the refreshment period. I took a glass and assured Raphael that I would be back shortly. I headed towards one of the bars at the far end of the room. Noticing the long lines, I spotted an empty bar near the stage and went over to get a double jack for myself and a soft drink for Raphael. Feeling elated and generous, I tossed a $5 bill into the tip jar, collected my drinks, and turned to head back to our table. Just then, my world came crashing down. Something caught my eye, making me stop and investigate. Behind the curtains, shielded from view, a couple was engaged in a passionate embrace. The woman's attire immediately drew my attention. It was the same dress Laura had worn. I briefly looked away, then froze as I saw the couple sharing an intimate kiss. The woman wrapped her arms around the man's neck, while his hands roamed freely over her backside. Their embrace suggested a level of familiarity that hinted this wasn't their first encounter. Watching them, I felt as though I was having an out-of-body experience. Standing there, motionless and clutching two glasses, I stared in disbelief until the pair finally separated. It became painfully clear that the woman kissing her boss, George, was indeed Laura, the love of my life. At that moment, one of the drinks slipped from my hand, drawing the couple's attention. Laura's face registered shock when she noticed me. Reality hit hard as my emotions surged. I was left speechless, my stomach dropped, and a sharp pang pierced my heart. Unsure how to react, I turned on my heels and headed back to our table, holding tightly to the remaining drink. Laura hurried after me, catching up before we reached the table. "Sweetheart, I just realized you and Raphael were here for the award ceremony," she said. "Thank you for coming. What you saw wasn't what it seemed. Let's talk later, okay?" she pleaded with me. I nodded silently and continued to our table, where Laura was met with congratulations from everyone. Raphael warmly embraced and congratulated her mother, while I sat in stunned silence, my face reflecting deep sorrow. I couldn't bring myself to say a word. Laura mentioned she had a few more tasks to complete before joining us again. Noticing my changed demeanor, Raphael tried to check on me, but I merely shook my head, remaining silent for the rest of the evening. It was clear I was not my usual self, and I felt uncomfortable in the company of others. The sight of Laura and George's passionate kiss weighed heavily on my mind. It was more than just a friendly gesture. In fact, Laura and I hadn't shared a kiss like that in years. Looking back, it had been over 5 years since our last intimate moment. Reflecting on those years, I couldn't ignore the changes that had taken place. I sensed trouble brewing, though I wasn't entirely sure of its nature at that moment. On the drive home, Raphael and Laura chatted about the celebration, with Raphael expressing her pride in her mother. Still reeling from what I had witnessed, I remained silent, lost in my thoughts. Both Laura and Raphael noticed my withdrawn behavior and tried to engage me in conversation, but I stubbornly kept to myself. Recognizing her mistake, Laura tried to make amends by showing extra affection, but I was unwilling to respond. I attempted to hide my distress from Raphael, but she sensed something was wrong and wisely left me to my thoughts. Before heading to bed, she whispered, "Dad, if you need to talk, I'm here for you," then hugged and kissed me before going to her room. I retired to bed, only to hear Laura enter a few minutes later. "Johnny, are you okay, baby?" Her voice trembled with anxiety as she climbed into bed and reached out to embrace me. I turned away from her. "I know it looked bad, and I'm sorry. I don't know what to say, but it wasn't what it seemed. Please talk to me." I remained silent, my anger starting to overshadow my initial shock. I didn't want to say anything that would be hurtful or unproductive. Despite her continued attempts to comfort me, I pushed her away and fell into a restless sleep, plagued by distressing dreams. The next morning, I awoke to sunlight streaming through the window, bracing myself for the difficult day ahead. I struggled to piece together the events from the previous night. After freshening up, I returned to the bedroom to find Laura watching me, trying to act as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, honey. Did you sleep well?" she asked, seemingly oblivious to the seriousness of the situation. Ignoring her question, I dressed and glanced at her before leaving the room. Turning back with a look of disdain, I finally spoke since the banquet. "How long?" Laura offered no response, simply staring at her hands. I left her to gather my thoughts over breakfast. My mind was in turmoil, knowing that things between us would change. I awaited the truth about her affair, understanding that Laura knew the importance of honesty and that any deception would be uncovered. Our bond had always been strong, and Laura had never given me a reason to doubt her fidelity. Despite this, I hadn't noticed any change in how close we were. She still embraced and kissed me as she always had. How could she behave this way while carrying on an affair? I'm baffled. If she's involved with him, how can she continue to show me affection? Could the woman I love truly be having an affair with George? This is absolutely dreadful, and I'm struggling to believe it. George, despite knowing he shouldn't show affection outside of his office, couldn't resist kissing me tonight. I admit, I enjoyed his embraces and kisses, and the evening was thrilling. I can understand his enthusiasm, but he knows well my strict rules against public displays of affection and the risks involved. Now, I'm faced with a significant dilemma. How do I explain to Johnny what he saw? He's not naive, and I know it won't be easy. That I remember the beginning of my affair with George. It started a year after I became his assistant during a rough patch in his marriage. With 6 young children, including twins, his wife was overwhelmed and preoccupied as they struggled through their issues. George confided in me about his difficulties. Our bond grew stronger, and I supported him through his trials, though it came with unintended consequences. George, being a strong and compassionate man, earned my admiration. I felt driven to provide him with comfort amidst his turmoil. There were moments when I held him, reassuring him that things would get better with time and love for his wife. During one of these embraces, a surge of passion led to a kiss that quickly turned into a carnal encounter on his office sofa. Looking back, I see how selfish I was and the trap I fell into. The esteem I held as George's assistant inflated my ego, making me feel superior to others in the office. George showered me with praise and compliments, and his upcoming promotion to CEO only fed my sense of self-importance. When I saw his distress that evening after a heated phone argument with his wife, I felt compelled to comfort him. Our embrace intensified into a kiss, and as our eyes met, it escalated into a 2-hour affair in his office. I was captivated by his influence and gave in completely. My natural inclination towards affection, hugs, and kisses only deepened our connection. Afterwards, guilt consumed me, and I thought about confessing to Johnny, but the fear of destroying our marriage held me back. Upon returning home, I was certain Johnny knew about my infidelity. Yet, as always, he and Raphael welcomed me with unwavering love and affection. My heart ached with guilt, but in that moment, I resolved to remain silent, vowing never to revisit the incident. After all, that evening was a singular occurrence, unlikely to be repeated. The next day, we spoke with George, acknowledging that what had happened was a one-time event that needed to be put behind us. Understanding this, we moved forward. In the months that followed, we often worked late into the night, and before long, I found myself once again in George's comforting embrace. Despite my deep love for Johnny and my desire to protect our marriage, being with George was a unique experience. He provided a sense of security with his imposing stature, even though he didn't possess the physical allure of my beloved husband. George, being overweight and bald, lacked Johnny's charm. Johnny knew George well and trusted me completely, so he had no qualms about me working alongside George in the evenings. George's stature, over 6 feet tall with robust arms and a substantial physique, contrasted sharply with his less attractive appearance. His physical presence, especially his sizable member, captivated me from the start, leaving me longing for more. Our encounters introduced me to sensations and experiences I had never explored before, fueling a growing desire for closeness. Initially, our liaison lacked emotional connection, but over time, it developed into a deep affection. Remarkably, our affair even helped salvage George's marriage. Our time together seemed to alleviate his domestic burdens, which justified my actions and eased my guilt. Meanwhile, my personal life with Johnny and Raphael remained fulfilling. They continued to receive my unwavering love and attention. With George's promotion, our rendezvous shifted to 2 evenings a week in the privacy of his secure office. Despite the secretive nature of our affair, we agreed to confine our interactions to these designated hours, ensuring discretion. Over the course of 3 years, our relationship evolved beyond physical gratification. His office became a sanctuary where we explored each other's desires, each encounter leaving me yearning for more. While making love with Johnny was characterized by love and tenderness, my time with George was intense and boundary-pushing. Balancing both relationships allowed me to meet different needs without guilt, living seemingly separate lives with distinct emotional connections. Remarkably, I found solace in giving George the same level of attention and affection that I gave Johnny. Recognizing the importance of these gestures and the desire they fostered during our private rendezvous, I embraced my role as George's confidant and companion. Our unique dynamic was confined to our designated meetings, ensuring that neither of us intended to harm our spouses. Our bond developed into a deep friendship rooted in discretion and mutual understanding. Any initial pangs of guilt I felt dissipated, replaced solely by a sense of fulfillment that I felt entitled to the life I led at work, maintaining professionalism and keeping our affair hidden. George often spoke fondly of his children, with family photos decorating his office, reinforcing his image as a devoted father and family man. Similarly, I projected an image of fidelity outside our secret meetings, fulfilling my role as a faithful wife and mother to Johnny and Raphael. Despite my devotion to Johnny, and showering him with affection, I couldn't deny the satisfaction I derived from my interactions with George. That I cherished our family life and took great care to protect them from the fallout of my actions. Naively, I believed my time with George had no impact on our family life until the revelation shattered my misguided assumptions. Johnny's piercing gaze that morning made it clear he was aware of the situation, demonstrating his astuteness. Now, faced with his direct inquiry, I wrestle with the dilemma of whether to reveal the truth. I can't bear to lose Johnny, yet continuing to live a lie is unbearable. The tears shed into my pillow offer no solace, leaving me with no option but to come clean and plead for his understanding. Despite my betrayal, I cling to the hope that Johnny's love for me will prevail, allowing us to face this ordeal together. As I glanced at the clock, I remembered that Raphael needed to be at her math club at school by 1 p.m. This urgency pushed me to confront the truth. When I arrived home, I found Laura on the patio, staring out at the lake with a cup of coffee. Without a word, I poured myself a cup, settled beside her, and asked again, "How long?" After a few moments of silence, I saw tears streaming down Laura's cheeks. What followed shook me to my core, igniting a visceral reaction. In a subdued, tearful tone, Laura confessed, 3 years. During your late work evenings, softly, almost inaudibly, she repeated, "Yes." I fell into silence for a moment before speaking. "So you're telling me that for the past 3 years, those 2 nights each week when you worked late were the only times you were intimate with George?" "Yes," she replied. "We never did it anywhere else." "I have so much to explain when you're ready to listen." "So, you're admitting that you've been having an affair with your boss twice a week for 3 years?" I asked, struggling to grasp the magnitude of her confession. "You don't need to be a mathematician to figure out the frequency. Over 300 times, right?" "So, you're telling me that those nights Laura stayed late at work were the only times you were together?" "You've betrayed me, Laura. It's like 1,000 cuts, and every time I thought I was healing, you dug deeper." "Did you and George find it amusing, ridiculing me while I was left in the dark?" "I can only imagine the jokes you made about me behind my back." "Thank you, Laura. I never thought you had it in you to shatter everything we've built. It's not just our marriage you've destroyed, It's my trust and my heart, Johnny. It's not what it looks like, Laura began to explain, but I cut her off, my anger overpowering her words. It is what it looks like, I snapped, my voice sharp and final. I got up from the porch, leaving her behind as her tears mixed with her pleas for me to stay. I needed space to get a handle on the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Betrayal was something I'd never experienced before, and I had to figure out how to cope. That I turned to the only person I felt I could confide in, my brother, Jake. Even though our lives had taken very different paths, Jake had always been there for me. He had served time in federal prison for trafficking euphoria pills, while I led a more conventional life. Despite our differences, we had a bond that transcended our separate worlds. I had stood by him during his trial and helped reduce his sentence from 20 years to 5 years. That I reached out to him that morning. "Hey Jake, it's Johnny. I need to talk. Laura's been unfaithful, and I'm lost. I'm hurting, and I don't know what to do. I didn't want to burden you with this, but I need someone to talk to. But man, that's heavy. I'm sorry you're going through this. Do you know who it is, and what happened? I know it's George, but I don't have all the details. I'm furious, Jake. I want to lash out, but I know that won't help. I feel like I could explode." "Listen, I understand your rage. I've seen people in your situation. You need to channel that anger constructively. Hit the gym, take a run, whatever clears your head. I'm here for you. Find out the full story, and then decide how to move forward. Stay calm. Call me tomorrow with whatever you find out. I've got your back. Thanks, Jake. I really appreciate it. I'll call you tomorrow." On the drive home, I passed a mattress store and had a sudden idea. I pulled over and made a decision. I wouldn't be sharing a bed with Laura again. For now, I was moving to a separate bedroom. The rest would have to sort itself out later. I bought 2 full-size beds, with assembly and delivery scheduled for that afternoon at 4:00 p.m. I sent a message to Raphael, letting her know I'd pick her up from school and wait for her during lunch. I knew I had to talk to her about the changes coming up at home. "Daddy, something felt off at dinner last night. I'm not oblivious. Please don't keep me in the dark. You've always been honest with me." "I know, Raphael," I replied, feeling the weight of what I was about to say. "It's time for us to have a serious talk. Given what's happened, you deserve to know the full truth. I caught your mom and her boss sharing a kiss backstage. Dad, maybe it was just a congratulatory kiss." "You can't overreact to something like that," Raphael suggested, trying to find a silver lining. "It wasn't just a kiss," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. "After that, she confessed to a 3-year affair. It's changed everything between us." 3 years? "Are you thinking about divorcing her?" Raphael asked, her voice tinged with worry. "Not right away. I'm still working through this. We'll stay married for now, but things will definitely change. I need you to stay neutral. She's your mom, and she loves you. This situation is between us, and I don't want you to suffer because of our mistakes. You've been a wonderful daughter, and I don't want this to disrupt your life any more than it already has." Raphael's face reflected her understanding and pain. I didn't want her to feel responsible for the changes in our household. Her reaction when she saw us together, her silence, the look of hurt, spoke volumes. She shot Laura a hurtful glance before retreating to her room. "Did you tell her?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. She sensed something was wrong. "She deserves to know why things will be different." I had to. "She needs to understand what's happening," I said firmly. "Everything is going to change. Divorce isn't on the table right now. I want to see how things play out first. Plus, I wouldn't do that to Raphael," Laura tried to explain, but I cut her off. "You had over 500 intimate moments with George behind my back. What can you possibly say that would make any self-respecting man accept this? You think I'm that weak?" "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Laura said, tears in her eyes. "I just want you to understand. I don't know if I can ever accept this, I interrupted. What breaks my heart is losing the closeness we once had. I can't share a bed with you anymore. I'll miss the intimacy we had, but what hurts most is the loss of your affectionate kisses and hugs. The changes will be inevitable, I continued. Since you broke our vows in our marriage contract, I'm not going to be faithful either. I never considered looking for another relationship before, but now I feel I need to. It might take time, but I will find someone. You can continue seeing George if you want, but don't expect to hear from me again. Laura looked like she'd been struck, her face going pale as she stumbled back onto the sofa. Johnny, you can't see other women. It would destroy me, and I won't allow it. I love you. It's not as it seems. Please, let me explain. Explain what? I said harshly. 500 times behind my back, and now you're worried about consequences? This is all because of your deceit and lies. Just then, the doorbell rang. I let the installers in, guiding them to where the old bed was. Since I can't share a bed with you anymore, I bought 2 new beds. I didn't think it would be fair for either of us to move into the spare room as they got to work. Laura's confusion and distress were palpable. What's happening? Who are these people, Laura? This is what our new reality looks like, I said, trying to stay composed. I'm done sharing a bed with you. It's time to face the consequences of your actions. Our current bed is being taken apart now. The new ones will be set up later. If you're not happy with the mattress, you'll have 3 months to choose another one. Separate beds? Laura asked, her voice breaking. Is that really necessary? Yes, I replied firmly. Since we won't be sharing a bed anymore, I don't want you in mine. I can't believe you're doing this. Yeah, I shot back, and I can't believe you had an affair with your boss over 500 times behind my back. So, we're even. I watched with a pang of sadness and remorse as the men dismantled the bed we had shared for so long. The memories of our life together seemed to fade as the old bed was taken away. Jake, you won't believe what I've just found out, I said into the phone, trying to hold back tears. Laura's been having an affair with her boss twice a week for the past 3 years. Over 500 times behind my back. I must be the most clueless man alive. She's humiliated me in ways I never thought possible, and I'm at a loss for what to do. Who's this guy? Jake asked. Her boss, George Matthews. What do you want to do about it? Jake asked. I want him to suffer. I want him to pay for what he's done in the worst way possible, I said, my voice cold. He's been sleeping with my wife for years and sending her home to me. He's betrayed and humiliated me for 3 years straight. I can't just let this slide. And Laura? She's dead to me. I'll divorce her once Raphael's in college. Until then, I'm going to make her regret what she's done. For now, she'll live a lonely life because I'm shutting her out. If she tries to divorce me before Raphael's in college, I'll ruin her career and expose her to everyone. You focus on Mr. Matthews, and I'll handle things at home. Johnny, don't do anything that could get you into trouble. Don't risk getting arrested, Jake advised. I've got your back. We'll talk soon. After our conversation, the tensions at home were palpable. Laura attempted to talk to me, but I responded with monosyllables. Though she tried to seek forgiveness, I remained hurt, angry, and resolute. I'd buried myself in work, coming home late each evening and spending weekends away. The atmosphere was tense, everyone walking on eggshells, anticipating my outbursts. One evening, after a particularly long day, I returned home to find Laura waiting to talk. After years of sharing a bed with the woman I once loved, I now slept just a few feet away from her. It was a somber realization, and I wasn't sure how I would cope for the next 2 years until Raphael went to college. After my shower, as I settled into bed, Laura cautiously began, Johnny, how was your day? Fine, I responded curtly. Johnny, Laura continued, her voice trembling, I've been thinking. I want to talk to you and understand your thoughts. I know things aren't good between us, but I love you, and I want to make things right, even if it's one step at a time. I was considering quitting my job. We don't really need the extra income, and I could spend more time at home with you. What do you think, baby? Despite my efforts to control my anger, her attempt to reconnect only fueled my fury. I sat down and spoke harshly, disregarding her stunned expression. Listen, Laura, I couldn't care less about what you do. Whether you work or don't work, sleep with your boss or find someone new, it's your life. I'm done trying to fix this. You've made your bed. Now you can lie in it, do whatever you want, Laura. And stop with the baby and honey, just call me Johnny, I said with finality. I've decided that you should keep your job and your affair with George. I don't plan on being with you ever again. I turned away, burying my face in the pillow as Laura's sobs filled the room. Her cries were a stark reminder of the pain she had caused me. Johnny, please, let me explain, she said, her voice choked with tears. I'm so sorry for everything. I still love you. The hurt I've caused is overwhelming. I miss your touch, your kisses, and your hugs. It's tearing me apart not being able to be close to you. I don't know how to fix this, but I don't want to lose you. The tension is affecting Raphael. She's pulling away. We need to find a way to get through this without destroying her happiness. Her last memories of us shouldn't be tainted by this mess. I paused, feeling the weight of her words. Raphael didn't deserve this turmoil. After a moment's hesitation, I said, fine. Set up an appointment, and I'll go. But understand, I'm doing this for Raphael. Not for you. Laura's relief was palpable. Thank you, Johnny. I'll take care of it. The next evening, Laura told me she'd arranged a therapy session for us the following day. The appointment was set for Friday at 3 p.m. I knew she was right. If we were to avoid divorce in the next 2 years, we needed to figure out how to live together without constant conflict. Raphael was hopeful about the counseling, and seeing her smile again was a small comfort amidst the chaos. Johnny, Raphael was so happy when I told her about the counseling. Her smile was like a light in this dark time, Laura said, her voice tinged with relief. As the days passed, I continued to avoid being home. I spent evenings out and came back late, using work as an excuse. I missed being around Raphael and cherished the rare moments when she would call me Daddy with genuine affection. Laura attended her individual sessions and came back each time looking emotionally drained. Seeing her struggle was hard, but it didn't change how I felt about her betrayal. Later that week, Jake called me with news that didn't offer the solace I had hoped for. He hinted at favors owed by some former cartel associates. Despite their reputation for ruthlessness, the cartel kept their promises. Jake assured me that they would handle the situation and make sure the consequences were severe. He had briefed them on all the details, the name of the target, where he worked, and how to contact him. Jake's instructions were clear, and he left the execution to his contacts, fully aware of the brutality involved. At George Matthews's residence, a white van was parked across the street as George arrived home. A young man approached his door, and moments later, the aftermath was severe. Though George survived, he faced life-altering injuries, losing the use of his fingers. The reality of his actions came crashing down, stark and harsh. George's involvement with Laura, while discreet, led to profound repercussions. What began as an affair had spiraled into a catastrophe. His clandestine relationship with Laura, once thought to be harmless, had devastated me and disrupted his own life. The fallout was intense. George lost his job, needed psychiatric treatment, and faced significant medical challenges. The affair had irrevocably altered his life, emphasizing the far-reaching consequences of infidelity. Our first session with Dr. Claire Adams unfolded as I had anticipated. Dr. Adams began by addressing us directly. Johnny, Laura has shared a lot with me in our previous session. I want you to know that confidentiality is crucial here. I've heard a lot in my career, so nothing will surprise me. Feel free to be open. Laura, why don't you start by explaining what you hope to achieve in these sessions? Laura, visibly distressed, turned to me. Johnny, I know I've caused you immense pain. I want to rebuild our family and reconnect with you emotionally and physically. I want us to find our way back to the way things were, to how we used to be." Her sincerity was clear, though it only added to my frustration. I remained quiet, watching her as she dabbed her eyes with a tissue. Doctor Adams then turned to me. "Mr. Cooper, what do you hope to gain from these sessions?" I replied. "I need to move past this fixation on the number 500. If I can manage that, maybe we can start to restore some semblance of normalcy." Laura flinched at the mention of the number. Dr. Adams, looking puzzled, asked, "Why is this number significant?" I responded with a hint of sarcasm. "Given your recent session with Laura, I thought the number might have come up. It represents the number of times Laura has been physically involved with George over the past 3 years." Dr. Adams nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Laura's reaction was one of discomfort, a reminder of the extent of the betrayal and the difficulty of confronting such painful truths. The figure of 500 was like a shadow, haunting me every time I saw Laura. 500 times, I said, my voice filled with a mixture of rage and sorrow. She betrayed me with this man behind my back, over and over again. The room fell into a heavy silence, my anger palpable as we all tried to absorb the weight of the revelation. Dr. Adams broke the silence. "Mr. Cooper, I understand your pain, but such language is not productive. It's hurtful and unnecessary." I nodded, acknowledging her point. "I apologize for my outburst. It was crucial for me to express how deeply this affects me. But you're right, I'll try to keep my emotions in check." Laura, her face streaked with tears, repeatedly muttered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Her apologies seemed to only scratch the surface of the damage. With my anger subsiding, I attempted to refocus. I want to find a way to forgive Laura, at least enough to create a home that isn't filled with constant animosity. Our daughter doesn't deserve to suffer because of our issues. My goal is to build a peaceful environment for her. "Thank you for sharing that," Dr. Adams said. "Let's work towards that goal." In the weeks that followed, I made a conscious effort to communicate with Laura in a more neutral tone, free from bitterness. Life at home improved slightly, better, though far from ideal. Raphael began spending more time at home, and we tried to engage in regular activities like dining out and going to the movies. Yet, it was clear to everyone that the warmth we once shared was gone. We no longer held hands, kissed, or even allowed each other to touch. Friends noticed the stark difference from our previous years of marriage, raising concerns that were hard to ignore. When Laura learned about George's accident, she was taken aback. Although George had remained tight-lipped about the incident, Laura grew suspicious of my reaction. That evening, as she recounted the break-in at her former boss's house, my response was a casual remark and a fleeting smile. "Is that really all you have to say?" she asked, her tone sharp and accusing that I shot her a glare. "Forgive me if I'm not shedding tears over your lover's misfortune. Shall we send him flowers, dear?" Laura's eyes averted, understanding the unspoken implication. She knew that any connection I had to George's ordeal could undermine any progress we had made. Jake had sent me a thumbs-up emoji marking the end of our communication for a while, and I wondered if the police would ever link me to the incident. But no investigation followed. The police eventually categorized the case as open, with the perpetrators and motive remaining a mystery. As promised, I began dating and staying out late. When Laura tried to question me, she realized it was best to stay out of my business. I made it clear that our marriage was now just a formality, existing only for the sake of our daughter. We managed to keep up a polite facade for her sake, but the reality of our situation was far from pleasant. Laura finally came to terms with the depth of the hurt she had caused. Though she couldn't undo the damage, I made it clear that if she pursued a divorce, I would expose her affair to our family and friends and make her life as difficult as possible. We both knew that this was the only way to maintain the fragile equilibrium of our home life. As Raphael prepared to leave for college, Laura found herself trapped in a marriage that felt both present and profoundly lonely. The affection that once defined her life, hugs, kisses, and warmth, was now a distant memory, shared with two men who were no longer in her life. The void left by Johnny's new relationship with another woman deepened her anguish. Counseling offered some comfort, but Laura's solitary journey was marked by the knowledge that Johnny could never forgive her betrayal. She was fully aware of her role in dismantling the marriage and hurting the man she once loved, acknowledging that her vanity, selfishness, and folly had led to this dire state. Raphael, who had always adored her mother, offered no sympathy. She was clear with Laura that the mess she found herself in was of her own making. Despite her love for Laura, Raphael struggled to forgive her for the pain she had caused their father. Meanwhile, George's life had deteriorated significantly. Unemployed and divorced, he lived in a modest apartment, having given up nearly 70% of his possessions, including the house where his ex-wife Joy would live until their youngest child turned 18. George was left to grapple with depression and physical limitations, and he found himself isolated from both the women he once loved and the one he had affairs with. His severed limb was a constant reminder of his betrayal. Tragically, a year after the divorce, George's life ended abruptly when he was struck by a truck. Witnesses reported that he had walked into traffic without hesitation, and while officially deemed an accident, those who knew him suspected it was a deliberate act of self-destruction. Laura could understand his despair and even contemplated a similar fate herself. After their affair, Laura and George never spoke again, each enduring their own brand of suffering. Once Raphael left for college, Johnny returned home with divorce papers. Although he was initially tempted to devastate Laura's finances, he chose to settle for an equitable split. Despite having forgiven her, the love he once had for Laura had irrevocably faded. Laura, unsurprised by the papers, signed them without contest, acknowledging her responsibility in the collapse of their marriage. Though her faith in love was shattered, she found a sliver of solace in the prospect of starting anew, determined never to stray again. The divorce was a grueling process for Johnny, laden with remorse and a yearning to undo the past or find some form of forgiveness for Laura. Yet, the haunting figure of 500 remained ever present. After selling the house and dividing their assets, Johnny embarked on a brief affair with Tricia, a dancer 15 years his junior. Seeking distraction rather than genuine connection, Johnny eventually found joy in his relationship with Tricia. It was amid this newfound happiness that he discovered a partner worth cherishing. Laura, however, clung to hope for reconciliation upon learning of Johnny's remarriage. Her self-reproach was relentless. Despite dating, she never found love again. Her spirit and appearance slowly faded over time. Although she maintained a close relationship with Raphael, she never heard from Johnny again. Laura's life was overshadowed by the pain she had inflicted, while Raphael pursued a career in psychology and married a doctor. Raphael led a fulfilling life, raising a large family and remaining steadfast in her commitment. She forged a legacy of love and dedication, diverging sharply from her mother's path.